trying to blind me with the light. Now I can see your eyes and understand your perception. The topic seems to be philosophical, but it's not really very much philosophical. It is directly related to what the country should be doing. If we want to build the house, we have to have the design in our head. We have to see it. We have to understand what we're building. If we don't understand, then any attempts of construction will remind us the movement, but without the vision of the final objective. This discussion about an individual and the state is very important for the correct building of state body. The notion of the state is very often used in the country. People like saying that the state should take care about everything, about everyone, but in fact it's not so unambiguous, it's not so simple. An individual has a lot of demands, a lot of needs. It's very important to realize what are the needs that the individual has to satisfy themselves and which needs should be delegated to someone else. This distinction defines many things when done properly. When I say that many functions of the state should be given to the people, it doesn't mean we make the state weak. It doesn't mean we remove the functions that the state should not be performing for the reasons I'd like to explain later. When we say about building the institution of the state, our grounds should not be the interests. Our ground should be the interests of the individual, because the highest value is the individual. And the state should be responding to the demands of the individual. And the state is as strong as many opportunities to give for the development of the people, for self-fulfillment, for their well-being, for confidence in the future. There are very simple and primitive needs. They're not primitive, they're important, but we don't think about them. And they have to be related to the needs that people have to satisfy themselves. For example, food, clothes. This problem should be resolved by people. They have to make money, they have to work. If you don't have pigs in your balcony, it doesn't mean you can meet your need through other people. The same like them, but exchange the products of their activity. People have the need for education, healthcare, environmental protection, security, defense, some rules of behavior, level playing fields, control over the rules of the game, arbitration, trips abroad, and so on. These are different needs of the people. I haven't named all of them. Not all of them can be fulfilled by the individual, but what of them cannot be fulfilled by the individual? A simple and primitive example. You cannot you cannot go abroad on your own, even if you want to. You can cross the border illegally, but it will have the poor outcome. You have to implement this needs by delegating this function to someone, and we do delegate this function to public institutions that have appropriate bodies, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and that form appropriate relationships with other countries, and that allow you to get visas, to get assistance in case you're abroad. Another need is the society needs some rules of the game, some rules of behavior. There have to be common rules for the behavior of all citizens. Even if we want to implement these functions ourselves, we cannot do it. It's impossible that every individual establishes their own rules. If everyone establishes their rules, there is no rules. It's the same as in the street. They drive in the way they want, when they want, on the red lights, and in any possible way. Whether we want it, this function has to be delegated by the people to someone. In the past, there were no public institutions, and they did not delegate. Today, we have civilized forms of delegation to the institutes of the state. When we delegate, when we request someone to do something for us, do we need to pay for this? Of course. We ask someone to clean the mess in our apartments. We have to pay for that. If we delegate the functions of setting the rules of the game to someone, we have to pay for it. It's not a secret if I tell you that this delegation in Ukraine is performed in the parliament of Ukraine. It establishes the rules of the game. It establishes the laws. And going back to the previous point, if we ask someone to establish something or to make some work, do we have to pay for that? Of course we have. This payment is called, how it is called? Taxes. It's extremely important to understand the nature of taxes. This is not the way to get something from other people in favor of other people. If it's the way of this redistribution, I will not pay taxes, and you will not also pay these taxes. It's the tool which is called to pay for the services which we would like to get from the state. The first example of services was just given by me. I'd like to discuss this example in details. Unlike how we buy meat or milk, when we understand what we're buying, when we pay for the services, when we pay taxes, we don't know what we pay for, because we pay into the pothole. We don't have one need in the rule of the games. There is related function of control of the rules of the game. We delegate this function to someone. When there is a conflict in adhering to the rules of the game, there should be an arbiter or the judge. We delegate this function as well. When we pay taxes, we don't know for which function it goes, because we pay through the instrument which is called the national budget, and the national budget is the pothole. I'd like to discuss several things when we discuss the taxes. Who pays these taxes? Traditionally, it is considered that the taxes are paid by the economy. In fact, it's not true. All taxes are paid by the citizens. The economy performs the transit function or agency function. The main tax to the treasury is VAT, value-added tax. This tax legally goes through the accounts of companies, but it's not their income, because VAT is not the component of the price. VAT is the additional to the price. Otherwise, it's a special budgetary tax which is collected, which is added to the price of every commodity, and has to be transferred to the budget. We can create a very simple system. Do you want to buy this mic? It costs 1,000 hryvnias. In the shop they tell you pay 200 to the bank as VAT, then you go back and we'll sell it to you for 1,000. It's inconvenient, and this is why in the world there is different rule. You pay for the microphone 1,000, and 200 hryvnias you pay in the same place, but 200 hryvnias is meant not for the seller. The price is meant for the seller. There are two systems of these taxes globally: tax of sale, American tax, and Ukrainian, not Ukrainian only. In the most countries they use VAT. There is no difference between these two taxes. Finally, there is difference in technology of collection. Recently I found out that in one of the American states, the business gets the commission for this tax administration, because they make payments, they collect payments from the buyers. As the cashier, they get the fee, the commission, but the objective of this tax is not to form the income of the business. I don't want to discuss other taxes because I don't have a lot of time. Excise doesn't require additional explanations because it's the same tax, but it is collected from separate goods. A little bit more complicated, but in essence it's the same. The income tax, the social security tax. The final pair is your pocket. The income tax is paid to the budget from your pocket. Why do I discuss these things in details? Because taxes cannot have the word of tax benefits. If I pay VAT, this means that, according to the law, you're allowed to steal VAT, because I pay for the services that I want to get from the state. When you relieve some entity, like Ukrainian parliament likes doing, and not only parliament, you're allowed to use the payment which doesn't belong to you. Because again, I'd like to emphasize, I'm not talking about the price, I'm talking about addition to the price. Second important point, as we'd like to get the services from the state. The taxes have to be paid by everyone, otherwise the taxes do not perform their functions, but only one. It's the payment for the services which we delegate to the state. But on the first examples, delegated functions to the state, I'd like to make some general remarks. Every time when you delegate powers to someone, you take a risk. In the institution, the risks are built in. These are political risks. When someone defines the destinies of other people, there is always a temptation of abuse, and there is a temptation of authoritarian regimes. From time to time, we see the attempts of these regimes to appear. You know that in our northern neighbor, a very popular idea is the system of ages. The binary call system. The first presidential term, second presidential term, and again first presidential term. We see this in other countries. When we delegate powers, you have to create checks and balances. Although there is always a risk here, but not only a political risk. There is also economic risk. What's the economic risk? Just imagine, you may not know each other, you will meet for a couple of days and you decide to go and to celebrate this event to Carpathian Mountains. It's impossible, one person cannot organize this trip. You have to delegate this function to someone. You have to collect money for that. Is there a possibility of abuse here? Yes. Because when wholesale procurement is performed, there is the English term of discount. In Ukrainian, this means to steal. Is it a right translation? You don't know the size of the discount that your manager gets. I'm talking about a small group of people. When we talk about 43 million people, they're not able to control any official. I don't want to create an impression that this is only a Ukrainian phenomenon. It is commonplace in every place. What's the difference? When we speak about the state, we forget that the state is represented not by ideal machines, but by people. They're called differently. They're called officials. What's the difference of the official from a regular person? There is one distinction, but it's very important. Unlike you, the official always spends the money that doesn't belong to him. And because of this circumstance, it was delegated to him by the people, and the efficiency of use of funds by the official always is worse because they spend the money that doesn't belong to him. Raise your hands. Who bought a textbook to a brother or sister for 1,000 hryvnias? Okay, thank you. And you read from press the information from time to time that the ministry ordered the textbook at the price of 600 hryvnias. These prices are non-existent. And from time to time we hear that the drugs were procured for 100 years ahead. In Ukraine, it's a unique country. Everyone knows the word Tamiflu. In the rest of the countries, people don't know that. But in Ukraine, everyone knows this word. When there was epidemic, they spent so much money for Tamiflu that all Ukrainians know this word. This happens because of the nature of the state. The official always spends the money that doesn't belong to him. And a very important conclusion of this that I'd like to suggest to you, the more powers you delegate to the state, the more are the opportunities for corruption. The more money that belong to you is spent by the public official, the greater is the opportunity for abuse, because the official has his own goals and interests. It's very important to have a look. Are all functions that were delegated to the state the correctly delegated functions? I'd like to say a few principal things. For example, education. In the Constitution of Ukraine, it says that our education is free of charge, and medicine also. Just ask a question to the authors of this idea, of this provision. Who pays salary to Ukrainian teacher? American, Russian, French budget? No. We pay this salary. Ukrainian citizens do that. But as I said, it's done indirectly through tax payments, but these are taxes from our pockets. How is the system built in this sector that I'd like to demonstrate? You pay for the education. You pay today. You pay full price. When you have a breakfast, when you have lunch, when you buy water, bread, coffee in the store, you pay taxes. In the future, they go for finance and education, healthcare, and so on. Ask a question to yourselves. You pay taxes to the treasury, and the official takes your money and brings this money to the school. A simple, primitive question. Aren't you able to pay the money to the school directly? This is not what I meant. If you give this remark, it's not what you pay. We pay 3 times. First, you pay through taxes. Second time, you pay through different funds. And third payment is informal payment, the bribe. It's triple payment, which often takes place in education and healthcare. On the other hand, does the system have some incentive for development? What's the interest of the system? To think about the quality of education. Moreover, financing of the budget sectors is performed, and the classical principle recently I have raised this topic due to the adoption of the law on science, that if we give $1 billion or $10 billion US for science, nothing will change, because in Ukraine, research facilities are financed. The money is allocated to maintain the laboratories, and the money has to be allocated not to maintain the labs, but to pay the final products, the ideas, topics, developments, and so on. When we say about healthcare or education, we have to pay not for maintenance of school, but for the product, high-quality child that was educated. In the universities, this is high-quality professional, and not just tons, units, meters, and so on. If we go deep into these things that we never deal with, actually, it proves that many things that seem to be free, in fact, are payable, and we pay several times. But we can do it ourselves, actually, because a person will always choose what school your child will go to the school which offers the best product, with high-quality services, with security for children, with cleanliness and other conditions. This creates incentives for the development of some sectors. When we speak about social protection of population, about some social guarantees, whose responsibility should that be? When you have a disease, when you have sick leaves, when you have unemployment and so on, or the most complicated topic, the pension support. We know that we are going to retire, that retirement is waiting for us. You know that soon you will be old. If you know that you will become old, what you have to do? You have to save some money for the old age. Today the system was established when the money goes to the pot. This pot is called the pension fund, and then when you retire, you go to that pot and ask the guardian of the pot, the official, can I take some money from this pot? And when the pot is won and there is the line of 13 million people, always there is the phenomenon that you observe. The one who is closer to the pot gets special pensions. Those who is further from the pot, his pension, I call them black pensioners. Our pension legislation divides people into regular pensioners and elite pensioners. Regular pensioners are far from the pot. And you can just simplify the system. If we know that a retirement is waiting for us, we have to do it ourselves. We have to save money for retirement. If you understand what I'm talking about, I'm not talking about cumulative pension system. I'm talking about further option, which is linked to refusal from the idea that was born by the German land in the past. The German land first gave birth to communism, and the experiment was conducted here. The German land gave birth to Bismarck, who implemented social, solidary pension system. And today all the world is suffering from this system. Maybe we'll be the first ones who will start building other rules. The only thing I'd like to emphasize, it is important for many aspects for our discussion. It's not the reform that can be performed tomorrow. It's the reform that needs a great period of time. Unlike many of my colleagues, I remember that we have 12 million pensioners. These are people who supported the previous generation, and now they expect that we will support them. Because when we say about this reform, Their consequence is serious or radical tax reform. If we pay for the school, if we form our pension for the future, then you don't have to pay taxes. The social security tax disappears and other taxes disappear that formed the funds for the needs that we delegate to the state. The reform I'm discussing is lengthy because we are obliged to support those people who are on the solidary pension system today. Why I want to discuss it? Unless we discuss this problem even in 50 years, this reform will not be carried out. When we talk about correct delineation of functions of the state, because of historical traditions, regardless of us, we delegated too many functions to the state. Too many of these functions may be performed by the people much better, and we have to get them back and stop paying for these taxes. The state can use much lower level of taxes, performing much less obligations. But people know better how to meet their needs because they always risk what they own, unlike officials. The worst example, the worst bank of Ukraine doesn't have 85% of the problem assets. I prepared the explanatory notes for the President that the loans made under the guarantee of the government, 85% of these loans were not repeat. Otherwise, they were stolen. I apologize for my French. And only 15% were repeat by the borrowers. Why it happens like that when we talk about state funds? It's a great example when you spend the money which belongs to someone else. You don't take care how it will be repeated, how it will be used. When we take serious revision of the system, it proves we don't need these taxes. We need a different taxation system. The amount of taxes should be lower. Another important consequence of the right delineation between the state and the individual, if you try to establish the functions that the state should perform and what are the functions that the individual should perform because they do it better, and then you try to decide who should get the right to perform which function. The ministries, the agencies, the rules of the game, they should belong to the parliament. The control over the rules of the game, the legality, it's not one body. As there is an interesting phenomenon. Many public agencies in Ukraine have no work to do. They are not needed. They are needed only to themselves. And in public agencies, there are no institutions to spare. Every institution is not just to spare, it is harmful. Because when it has no job, it starts inventing job. And they try to inhibit everyone else from working. I'd like to emphasize once again that the right delineation of functions between the individual and the state gives answers to the correct building, correct structure of the public agencies. The main problem on the institution, it is needed.
It's needed. I never say it is not needed. However, it's not needed by those functions. The problem is not about downsizing. It's about cutting off unnecessary functions. Finally, I would like to say, though this is a philosophical discussion, yet it's rather important to build a system. Another important thing, you will never make everything fast or very fast. Those reforms are not easy. For example, there was an attempt by the Minister for Health to do the right reform. Good first step. Turning medical institutions from maintenance to service payment for the end product. It has no chance to pass. It's never perceived, both in this room where I sit and opposite place, the place where this law was prepared. This is not insurance medicine, as some people think. This is, however, the first step, which connects the results of the work with performance, performance with financing. It's important to give the money. It's also important that the product you would like to receive and the way of financing are interconnected. I am ready for your questions. Stanislav Poroshenko, National University. I would like to thank for your presentation. I have two questions. First, how can we renew trust to the state from the citizens if there is no will of political elite? Secondly, for the society to undertake functions of the state, we need civil society, which nowadays does not exist. So how we can build it? Thank you. It has no. It has nothing to do with the topic of the conversation. It's about political demand. My answer is simple. Nobody can bring you on their readily available. It depends on political demand. You can set that demand. In the society there is such demand. However, it is not materialized in the place where decision is taken. This is a political problem, a problem of political choice. Nobody can create a civic institution. You have to do it yourself. Nobody can create a party. Not the parties that we have, ideological parties, because I have to hide all the fingers to count the ideological parties. They don't exist. There is one. I don't know of any. I don't know. If there is, I'm sorry, but I don't know of it. Or maybe I'm not aware. Yet I don't know of such political parties. This is your problem. This is our problem, common problem of the entire society.
Нет, пожалуйста, вам мы не дадим слово, а кому-нибудь другому дадим. Спасибо.
Can I have the floor? Can I have the floor? My name is Anna. Is my understanding correct about the pension system, that there will be some kind of generation that will pay for the previous generation which has retired and also accumulate for the pension for themselves? If yes, which generation? Ourselves, our kids, our grandkids? Anna, I hope I don't disappoint you if I say that I'm afraid that this will not be for you. Most probably those kids were not yet born. However, what I would like to focus on, I really want to have one nice thing in your heads, doubts about the system being built in the right way. The doubt if everything was built fine in the world. I can tell you no, there are no ideal systems. I would quote as the best of what we should do. Technically, there is one variant. We know that every year part of the old generation passes away. We can introduce, for example, from some year, the generation which becomes labor activity would not pay unified social tax. We know that the same number of people will pass out regretfully as this is life. So year to year, gradually, we can walk away from the pay-go system to the system of cancelling that institution of the pay-go system, pay-as-you-go system, solidarity system. When I spoke of social problems, I didn't mention the society must avoid some answers. I hope everybody has Christian morals. We know what it is about. The pay-go part must exist in the small part. Don't have that many disabled people. When it is about the people who are alone, for example, orphans, it's not a big amount of money that we have to donate into the common pot in order to solve that problem. I mean, as a duty to pay for the treasury in order to solve that problem. So please don't jump up. My name is Sergey. Can it be the way, not only from some year, but the generation which comes? A basic question. Someone who starts labor activity, reaching the age of 18 and getting hired somewhere or going to study in a university, so he says for himself and he signs an agreement with the state, like in a democratic society, that I don't like to use such a service as pay-go system, pension insurance. Maybe I cannot live up. Sometimes the men do not live up and the men do not use the pension support. support because the average mortality, life expectancy is 57 or something among the men, right? So the man, as a responsible player in the market, the agent would say, I'm not going to use that system, and I refuse from the future pension. I will be responsible for myself. I myself will do what other people accumulate for themselves, and that social tax will not be charged, will it? I feel what kind of answer are you pushing me to, but I will disappoint you. Maybe I will not make a traffic accident, but I have paid insurance contribution. This is the nature of the pay-go system. It's easier to say like you do. However, I don't have the right to forget about 12 million pensioners. We pay a unified social contribution today for maintenance 12 million pensioners. Letting them alone, that's what nobody should do. This is a problem of transitional period. We cannot do it immediately. If you mean what I say, that starting from particular year, generation by generation, year by year, we start taking away the pay-go system. At the same time, it reduces due to natural reasons that the number of pensioners is growing, he says. It's another topic that I didn't discuss. By the way, I don't discuss the modern condition. This is the problem of the modern condition. Worldwide is called in a simple manner. It is called the problem of the pension age. But it had nothing to do with the topic that I discussed. If you would like to discuss the topic, I'm ready to answer. However, this is a problem of the pay-go system. I don't envy even the pay-go people, because their future is very gloomy. The fund, which is supposed to pay the pension, it lacks 80+ billion. Having in mind that the government raised pension before what was in the budget, I believe that number will be much higher. And I don't see anything good in front of us. There are problems that must be answered. Intentionally, I avoided that. There were quite many colleagues who have discussed that problem, modern problems. If you want, I'm ready to discuss particular questions. Good morning, my name is Christina. We had a philosophical discussion, therefore I have a question. You have mentioned rational opinion that functions of the state must be passed to the people or returned to the people. What do you think whether our society might be at some moral or mental level to absorb such functions and be held liable for fulfillment? I have here this question for 25 years, starting from 1993. I keep being convinced. Please teach people swimming on the floor, then throw them into the river. I don't know how to learn how to swim, not entering the river. But I have the reasons to say that Ukrainian citizens have adequate behavior. If you look into quite many economic things that take place in the country, this is a textbook behavior. By Ukraine, you can write a textbook. How to do change and how to not to do change. In the second area, we have even more examples. It's not about people. People are getting used to. However, I don't know how to characterize my colleagues, because this is a direct fault. That form people of second, third generation that talk to people with the language of stomach, forgetting that people also have brains. I don't think so. I believe that we have to talk to the society honestly, because I believe that society is capable of understanding the problems, whatever complicated they are. Because what is happening in the country has to do with the topic of the discussion. It caused me to prepare the law. I still have it. I didn't register it. It is called on activities about revolutionary improvement of wealth of Ukrainian citizens. In that law, there are a few articles. Article 1, nobody is obliged to work in Ukraine. Article 2, the length of the vacations in Ukraine is 365 days. and once in 4 years, 366 days. Nobody has to pay for anything in Ukraine. Article 4, in Ukraine it is not necessary to repay loans. Article 5, every Ukrainian is entitled to pension even before he is born. Article 6, every Ukrainian is guaranteed to double average salary of the United States. This was my response in the bold populism of the past parliament when they want to switch all functions to the government. The government will do everything. Let us pay nothing to people, take all money to the treasury, and kind Ukrainian officials will buy us bread, milk, meat, clothing, homes. Then we have to actually buy prison uniform and getting locked into the in some place where we shall be taken care of. You said many agencies are unnecessary. What do you think? What kind of agencies have to be liquidated right now? Starting from the head. How many conductors are necessary in the orchestra? One. Why one? And now you are surprised. Why there is no music in Ukraine? Because along with one conductor, there are subconductors. The Prime Minister is a conductor. A regular minister, first minister, the same like all other ministers. The only thing he has no portfolio, but there are exceptions. Jean-Claude Juncker, before appointment into EU, was Prime Minister of Luxembourg, Minister of Finance of Luxembourg. I mean, so he was also minister. He is a conductor. His job is to hold the meeting of the government, of the collective body. How many deputies does he have? It doesn't matter, 4 or 3. None are necessary, because I was Vice Prime Minister and the Minister. I can tell you that Vice Prime Minister is a position which is to prevent the Minister from working. They have no agency. If the Ministry of Economy is responsible for economics, what the Vice Prime Minister is responsible for? He has no staff, he has no machine, which is called ministry. The only thing is to spoil the work of the Minister. This is a simple example, so it's very important. Please ask another question. How many ministries of economy should there be in Ukraine? 0, maybe 0. But I will start with another. If you think this is a Ministry of Economy, it's a deep mistake. Agriculture sector, isn't that an economy? What about transportation? Isn't that the economy because it is called infrastructure? And a huge list of others. I can tell you many things you didn't see before. How many healthcare ministries Ukraine needs? How many education ministries Ukraine? You know how many ministries of education? I can tell you, I don't know. However, 20 plus at least. Ministry of Finance is Ministry of Education. Why? Because it has its system of educational establishments. Security Service is Ministry of Education. Prosecutor Office is Ministry of Education. National Bank is Ministry of Education. So it's not a function of the central bank. There is a cooperative named Department of the Presidential Administration. This is also Ministry of Education. They manage properties of the presidential administration. The function is dissolved in a number of agencies. Do you think there is a single Minister of Finance? There are more than 450 Ministers of Finance. 450, you know where they sit? Probably in Parliament. One is opposite the Parliament, and the other one is in Bankiska Street. All those are Ministers of Finance. Anybody may file their loan budget. Minister of Finance will never know of that. On one hand, a lot of agencies overlap. On the other hand, lots of agencies are responsible for the same functions. They will never be law and order unless someone manages the system. You know that education, the public functions are even carried out by civic organizations. For example, the main manager of budget funds, there is such a notion, can only be a government institution. Who knows what is the National Academy of Science? is a civic organization, self-governing organization. Please open the budget. The main manager is National Academy of Science. According to the new law, that main manager of budget funds and also contractor. He orders the works and he pays. The same is the road agency. They order to build the roads and it also builds roads. Will there be anything good from such a tandem? Maybe you don't see such things. Due to circumstances of my life, I have worked for quite many agencies, and I have learned such things very well. Maybe not everything, but it tells that changes are needed, fast changes, because this will affect the money as well as efficiency, because we never rode cars on 4 wheels. We have 5 wheels, 6, 7 wheels. We never tried how to drive on 4 wheels. Maybe it's much better to drive on 4 wheels compared to 5 wheels or 6 wheels. More questions? You answered about the state, a political system. We have quite a number of political parties, 300 plus, 50 registered in last year. You had the party Reform and Order. Do you create political parties? What really political parties are needed? I cannot answer this question. Please share your experience. Reform and Order is the primary form, but we cannot walk back into the same river. I have certain views. I don't change my view, will not change the views of quite many people in this room. People must form the parties along with their political views. Those must be the views. Please have a look. When this parliament was elected, it seems that like all political forces or parties, they seem to have ideology. For several months, they could not approve the document named coalition agreement. What did they go to the elections for? Let us look actually how unified we are. When the moratorium is voted on sales of land, Pynzenyk votes against it, 309 vote for the moratorium. It demonstrates serious ideological differences that exist within the political structures. I only have quoted one example. It's very important in the society to be focused not on the names, for the society to know that those people will follow that ideology regardless of who is the leader of the party. Regretfully, I don't know. Maybe there are 300 ideological parties. I don't know among them one ideological. Among those in parliament, it's difficult for me to quote an ideology-based political party. We still have time for 2 questions. You mentioned it is necessary to stop functional overlap. Do you have an example as a state Ukraine may follow with such a system when functions are also overlap in the administration? I don't think I know other countries quite well. I'm sure that in quite many countries it's organized better. Regardless what was done or what was done in other countries, I spoke of simple things. Though whether it's good or bad, we don't understand that such things have to be solved. There are basic rules of administration, regardless of how they are organized worldwide. I insist that it's not really good worldwide. The infection of socialism got everywhere. I don't want to develop ourselves towards those countries that believe we have to give most of the guarantees and to charge the most for that. Most of guarantees should be given to people. Giving the people, let them resolve that. And take the least for the government. Nowhere government does best. Don't think corruption is a Ukrainian phenomenon. The more you delegate, plus non-transparent rules of the game, the more you will have corruption. Therefore, if you want to have minimum corruption, take away everything. Who will take from your own pocket? No point. However, we hear that they steal here and there. Another important thing, which is very important, it's within what is happening in Ukraine. If the government works on the principle of payment for services rather than taxes, public government is not entitled to earn money. There is a war nowadays. I am fighting with the government at least about the attempts of turning the ministries into commercial institutions. For example, a lot of noise about so-called the Bureau for Finding Assets. I cannot find good words about the document that was prepared. It's like a private company, because 25% from the assets found they will take for themselves. You remember the tax people, they charge 30% of additional accrued taxes. Isn't it a good business? Let us pay charges for the number of people they imprison. The customs people, let them, the traffic police people, please take away legally, please. This will not be a bribe, this will be legalized payment. If the assets arrested could be sold, to sell arrested assets, I would like to make you happy. In one of the amendments to Ukrainian law, it is envisaged that the assets of third parties are subject to arrest. What are assets of third parties? Those are the persons not subject to suspicion. Those assets could have been sold, transformed, and so on. A nice commercial institution which manages arrested property and can turn it to some other agency, the cooperative, because they choose whom to transfer the arrested assets, not the confiscated, just arrested. The government institution cannot live by commercial principle. Only economics lives through commercial principles. We pay for government in taxes, with our taxes. The last brief question. My name is Oksana. We understand what is the role of the state. However, there are some authorities the government cannot delegate. What is your personal attitude to the debt policy and functions of the government on the external scene, cooperation with IMF, starting from 1990? I was never head of the government. Maybe I will at some point, but I never did it before. I hate debts. What kind of debts? Public debts, those that I hate. I would like to insist that, because people sometimes misinterpret what I say. I don't speak of business debts. Business recreates the debt in its activity. If I borrow for meat in order to make sausage, I turn meat into sausage, and I recreate the product. Naturally, the budget eats away the money. They don't recreate. Therefore, I hate the word debt, and this is a fundamental problem of the country. The debts and budget deficit. About IMF, it was necessary and still necessary. We cannot avoid that. We need IMF not for the budgetary reasons, as some people think. The budget is prepared through the National Bank. I don't characterize how they do it. However, the IMF has to do with the next balance, so-called balance of payments. We have this balance between imports and exports. Now it got equalized. But the debt's $126 billion overall foreign debt, of which 55 billion so-called short-term commitments. They have to be repaid within 12 months. There are no sources of coverage. We don't print dollars. National Bank never prints dollars. Thank God. If Ukraine would have printed dollars, then the crisis would be worldwide. Now there is only fever here. We don't have a source of replacement, and I will not open a secret that nowadays in Ukraine we are in the situation when everybody stopped crediting lending to Ukraine. The only lender, so-called ambulance, which is International Monetary Fund, there is nobody to replace it. All other creditors are connected to the IMF. No IMF, no other loans. Whatever they like or dislike, it's disliked. Why? Because it gives money. If it would be given the money, it would be priceless. But it also furthers conditions, and Ukrainian politicians dislike it. Give us money and we would do everything we want. But that institution does not give money for nothing, because it's referred to when everybody refuses. Ukraine does not access debt market for quite a while. What would you call our free generation to, in order to not to repeat such mistakes and to make positive changes? First, I would not be speaking of what had happened before. 10 years ago, I would call you to something else. Now I would call you to the following. Please have doubts. Don't pass by anything. Please think. couldn't we build quite many things we used to better? I don't want you to pass big school to come to the same understanding that I did, because I thought at some point that everything is ideal. It seems to be not so. We have a lot of room for creativity. Think, be brave, and change the country. God will help you, and me also.
Спасибо, Виктор.